So this is an introduction to the different textures in igneous rocks. That's what I decided to present on. I'll just begin the presentation with how igneous rocks are formed. Igneous rocks are just magma that's been crystallized, and the crystallization can occur beneath the surface or after there's been an eruption. To give a simple reminder, texture refers to the look of the rock based on the size, shape, and arrangement of the mineral grains. Before I begin going into the different textures, it's important to know what three things cause different textures. Basically, they're just the rate at which molten rock cools, and the amount of silica in the magma, and the amount of dissolved gases in the magma. The first one is a phonitic texture, which is also known as fine-grained texture, and it forms at the surface, but it can also form in intrusive masses in the upper crust. And the crystals in this rock are so small, they have to use a microscope to find the different minerals, and they're usually characterized as light, intermediate, or dark in color, and that's an example of what the rock looks like. The next one is phaneritic, or coarse-grained texture, and this rock texture is formed when large masses of magma slowly crystallize at great depths. And it has a lot of crystals that can be identified without the microscope, like you can tell in the picture the different crystals. The next one is porphyritic texture, and this is an example on the left-hand side. And this type of rock texture is developed when the environment around the magma changes during its crystallization process. And it could either be a change of temperature or pressure. And this rock texture have large and small crystals combined, and the picture actually points them out too, which is really cool. The next one is versicular texture. And versicular rocks have a very recognizable texture. You've probably seen a rock like this. Those little holes or voids or divots, whatever you want to call them, they're made when gas bubbles erupt and it's starting to begin to solidify. And these tend to form in the upper zone of lava flow where it is going to cool quickly. The next one is glassy texture, and glassy textures are created when molten rock is shot into the air and it cools really quickly. And to quote the textbook, unordered ions are frozen in place and they're able to unite into an orderly crystalline structure. And the ions are being frozen. It turns into this glassy look like the one in the picture example, and that's an example of obsidian. So it's a good example of that texture. And the last one is pyroclastic texture, which is also known as fragmental texture, and these rocks have a lot of different materials in them, so like rock fragments, magma blobs, and fine ash. And some of the rock fragments come from when there's really explosive eruptions and they're pulled from the walls of the volcano. And an interesting fact that was mentioned in the textbook is that these rocks are much closer to sedimentary rocks than they are to igneous rocks.